be involved in games, to be around this lifestyle. But for me, if we're going to get all these professionals involved, they need to be trained, but parents need to be trained as well for the science for their own children.
Okay, Sheldon Thomas, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you. We're now 11 days away from leaving the EU with no deal. So could anything in the Commons this week change that? Tonight, MPs will vote again on a number of alternatives to the Prime Minister's deal as she decides whether to try to get Parliament to vote on her plan a fourth time. We're in for another busy Brexit week. With the latest, here's our political correspondent, Carl Dillon.
MPs are returning to Parliament today to have another go at finding an agreement amongst themselves. They might then tell the Prime Minister to negotiate a closer relationship with the EU than she'd been planning. How much of a problem that is depends a little on which Cabinet Minister you ask.
The Prime Minister has said that she will listen to the House, and one of the reasons we're in this difficulty, I mean, it's another very serious week, is because of the numbers in the House.
Staying in a customs union or accepting a single market would mean that some of the manifesto pledges that were made at the general election would be compromised. The best way forward to honour the votes of 17.4 million people and also to safeguard our economy is to get behind the Prime Minister's approach.
The Brexit options thought to have the most support in Parliament are staying in a customs union with the EU, staying in a customs union and the single market, or holding another referendum. Or even, if the EU won't postpone Brexit, creating a route for the Prime Minister to cancel it.
She would have to put the option of no deal to the floor of the House for a vote, and if no deal was defeated, she would then be mandated to revoke the Article 50 notice, so we didn't end up with a no deal Brexit on the 12th of April.
The ayes to the right, 286. The noes to the left, 344.
Although the Prime Minister's deal was rejected again on Friday, more MPs voted for it that time than have yet supported any of the other options. So it is entirely possible that the Prime Minister's deal will return to the House of Commons yet again, maybe this time in a runoff vote with whichever of the options is most popular amongst MPs today. But if Parliament does demand a closer relationship with the EU than the Prime Minister has previously said she would accept, she will have to choose between taking that route or splitting her party. Carl Dillon, ITV News, Westminster.
Our political correspondent Paul Brand joins me now. Two tricky questions for you then. What's the likely outcome of tonight's voting, and then what happens?
Well, Nina, MPs have got themselves into a bit of a habit lately of saying no to everything. The expectation is that they may well break that tonight and finally say yes, probably to a softer Brexit involving a customs union, though, to be quite frank, the numbers just aren't clear enough. Right now, MPs haven't even really arrived in Westminster en masse just yet. They start debating this afternoon, they start voting around 8 o'clock, the results should come in shortly after 10. It will be a free vote, MPs can vote whichever way they want, that the Cabinet have been asked not to take part. And although the Prime Minister says she doesn't want this softer form of Brexit, you've got to wonder whether she protests too much. There is a theory that Downing Street are hoping MPs do indeed back that softer form of Brexit tonight so that she can have this runoff vote that Carl mentioned in his report there, possibly on Wednesday, hoping that rebels come in then behind her plan. One said this lunchtime, though, that he would vote against both options, which is why there's still talk in this place about the potential for a general election. After all the votes in here, maybe it will come down to one we all take part in.
Paul Brand, thank you. And you can watch today's votes live as they happen this evening on our website later. Go to itv.com/news. The investigation into the disappearance of Madeleine McCann could be abandoned because new funding hasn't yet been granted. Officers were given money to investigate for a further 6 months last October, but are yet to find out if they'll be given more. Ivor Bennett is outside Scotland Yard. Could this be the end of the search, Ivor?
Well, potentially, yes. It all depends on what the Home Office decides. They've said this morning they've received an application, a request from Scotland Yard to extend the funding for their investigation for another year until March 2020, but at the moment they've not made a decision, and we're told talks are still ongoing. It's now almost 12 years since Madeleine McCann went missing from the Portuguese resort of Praia de Luz, and in that time, nearly £12 million has been spent investigating her disappearance. Officers have taken thousands of statements, they've investigated hundreds of potential leads, identified several people of interest, but despite all that, we don't actually know that much more now about what happened to Madeleine than we did back in 2007. Operation Grange, as it's called, is not a very big investigation anymore. Just 4 detectives have been working on it for the last few years, but the fact they've requested more money to extend their investigation suggests they're not giving up hope of solving the case. We've also asked the McCann family for reaction to all this morning, but they've declined to comment.
Thank you. Almost 2 million workers across the country are getting a pay rise from today as the national minimum wage goes up. Workers aged 25 and over will now receive £8.21 an hour, up nearly 5%. Younger workers on the minimum wage are also getting a rise. But household bills are going up too. That includes energy bills, council tax, the TV licence fee, prescriptions and even stamps. It could cost each household more than £200 a year. Thousands of people are dying in Britain every year from exposure to asbestos. Breathing in its dust can cause cancer, and sometimes it can take more than 20 years to diagnose. Asbestos was banned 20 years ago, but people are still being exposed to it. It's still present in at least 500,000 buildings built before 1999, and 5,000 deaths a year are linked to it. Mavis Dye has been diagnosed with a cancer linked to exposure to asbestos. It's thought she contracted it 49 years ago when she breathed in the dust from her husband's clothes.
I was washing his clothes, and you shake the clothes because in their days there was no protection, and there's none of this going for a shower after work and showering the dust off. He came home with it and brought it home.
Joining me now is Simon Beth-Lendley from the Institution of Occupational Safety and Health. Thank you very much for coming in. Why is it still in so very many buildings when it was banned so long ago?
Well, up to about 20 or 30 years ago, Britain used more asbestos than any country in the world for about a century. So there's just so much of it. It was so useful. It was fireproof, it was strong. It's in asbestos panels like we saw on the last item, but it's in lagging around pipes, it's old boilers, it's maybe in your loft, it can be on the floor tiles, that kind of thing. So it's very hard to detect, and it doesn't really look like anything else as well. I mean, you need to have an eye for what you're looking for, and that's why you need specialist surveyors to come in and have a look.
So where you work, where you live, if you're concerned that you are in an older building, what can you do about that? Who do you go to say we need to investigate this?
Well, if you're working on buildings, you need to take great care, and the people most at risk are tradespeople very often. The biggest challenge is that 20 years ago, it was banned in this country finally, but it's still around us, and a lot of young tradespeople coming in aren't really aware of it. They don't know what to look for. So you need to ask to see an asbestos register, and you need to know how to handle asbestos and actually not to handle it if you feel you've come across it, to get specialists in. We run a campaign called No Time to Lose, which is about preventing exposure to asbestos, and we have some really good free resources which tell people exactly what to do, exactly when to leave alone, and when to call in specialists.
And what should they do? How do they protect themselves on a day-to-day basis if they are working in that kind of environment?
So if they find out they are, and they think they've exposed asbestos and created dust or potential for that, they need to stop work immediately. They need to get out of the area, seal the area off, tell other people about it, and get people in to actually protect the area and plan how to manage that asbestos. If asbestos is disturbed, it's generally quite safe. It's when it's disturbed that it really causes...
So if it is, treat it as an emergency. Simon, thank you very much for coming in. Thank you. Still to come, 40 years of bungee jumping. We speak to the man who dared to take the very first dive.
My bike start again, they're literally trapped. So that was nice.
Before that, even though as many as 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage, it is still something rarely spoken about because because most happen in the early stages before family, friends and colleagues even know a woman is pregnant. So many cope with miscarriage alone. The BBC presenter Alex Jones has spoken about her own miscarriage and returning to work on television